Everyone's sitting so far back. Don't be afraid to come this way. I don't bite. And it's probably better if you're forward so that others who come in later don't have to step over everyone to come in. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Giri Varadhari Gopi Janavallabha Giri Varadhari Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana Yamunati Banachari Yamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopi Janavallabha Giri Varadhari Gopi Janavallabha Giri Varadhari Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanacharya Yamuna Tira Vanacharya Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Ajnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vidam Tang Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitanscha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shri Mate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachadesha Tarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namosute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishavan Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Good morning, everyone. Hare Krishna. That too. Guten Morgen. Dzień dobry. Dobro jutro. We have a quite international group here, I think, yes? So, I know for many of you, English is a second language, if not a third language. Or maybe it's not a language at all for you, in which case, what do we do? Does anyone need translation from English? Everyone is okay? I need translation from my American to English. Anyway, good. Today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, fortunate as we are. And we're reading from the 5th canto. And this is chapter 1, the activities of Maharaj Priyavrata. And these have been, you could say, introductory verses leading up to description of his activities. And what we have today is just sort of a conclusion to the introduction, in which the king, Priyavrata, one whose vow is dear, Priyavrata, has been persuaded by his grandfather to take up duties as king. What we have today, although it looks like it's written as a verse there, is not a verse. It's prose. It's a sentence which goes as follows: Shri Shuka Uvacha iti samabhito mahabhagavato bhagavatas tribhuvana gurur anushasanam atmano lagutayavanata shriyodhara badham iti sabahumanam uvaha. So I think instead of trying to make it into a verse, we can just go through the word for word. Shri Shuka Uvacha. Shri Shukadeva Goswami said, Iti, thus, samabhita, completely instructed, Mahabhagavata, the great devotee, Bhagavata, of the most powerful Lord Brahma, Tribhuvana, of the three worlds, Guru, the spiritual master, actually of the spiritual master, Anushasanam, the order, Atmana, of himself, Lagutaya, because of inferiority. Avanata, bowed down. Bow down, mister. You don't know that song? Yeah. You're already after that generation. Shirodara, his head. Badham, yes, sir. Iti, thus. Sabahumanam, with great respect. Uvaha, carried out. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation Sri Shukadeva Goswami continued. After thus being fully instructed by Lord Brahma, who is the spiritual master of the three worlds, Priyavrata, his own position being inferior, offered obeisances, accepted the order, and carried it out with great respect. Purport. Sri Priyavrata was the grandson of Lord Brahma. Therefore, according to social etiquette, his position was inferior. It is the duty of the inferior to carry out the order of the superior with great respect. Priyavrata, therefore, immediately said, "Yes, sir, I shall carry out your order." Priyavrata is described as a Mahabhagavata, a great devotee. The duty of a great devotee is to carry out the order of the spiritual master, or the spiritual master of the spiritual master in the parampara system. As described in Bhagavad Gita 4.2, Evang parampara praptam ... How does the verse go? Evam parampara praptam . Very good. You know everything. One has to receive the instructions of the Supreme Lord through the disciplic chain of spiritual masters. A devotee of the Lord always considers himself a servant of the servant of the servant of the Lord. Are we closing the door? Yeah. So ends Srila Prabhupada's purport to this sentence, Iti samabhito Mahabhagavata Bhagavatas Tribhuvana Guror Anushasanam Atmano Lagutayavatana Shirodaro Badhamiti Sabahumanam Uvaha. Sri Shukadeva Goswami continued, after thus being fully instructed by Lord Brahma, who is the spiritual master of the three worlds, Priyavrata, his own position being inferior, offered obeisances, accepted the order, and carried it out with great respect. Very nice. This.
I just wanted to seek the permission to roll some sweet balls.
Rolling sweet balls is permitted. Yes, as long as it's not too noisy. Sweet ball rolling is generally rather quiet activity. Okay. All right. A as I said, this is kind of concluding the introduction to this chapter, and it's quite clear what's happening. Maharaj Priyavrata has been convinced. He's saying, Badham. Yes, sir. He's taking the order. He's offering obeisance. Bow down, mister. And he is going to now perform that duty of being a king, although he wanted to head for the hills. He wanted to go to the forest. He wanted to give everything up. His grandfather said, no, we have a job for you, and it's important. You have to, and you're the one. You're the one to do it. So, and he gives many reasons, and he gives reassurances. And the big reassurance is, you're not going to get entangled. You'll be okay. Even though you'll be so involved in so many duties, including householder life, you'll be okay. Why? You'll be okay because you will take shelter of the Supreme Lord. You will be protected as, how did the verse go? Lord Brahma continued, my dear Priyavrata, seek shelter inside the opening in the lotus of the feet of the Lord. Interesting expression. Whose navel is also like a lotus. Thus conquer the 6 sense organs, accept material enjoyment because the Lord, extraordinarily, has ordered you to do this. You will thus always be liberated from material association and be able to carry out the Lord's orders in your constitutional position. So he's being empowered to take this service. What I thought we could explore, in relation to this, is the notion of authority. The word authority is sometimes, well, I won't say, it carries a lot of connotations for us. Some may be more positive, some may be more negative. But I'd like to kind of first hear from you. What's the first thought that comes to mind when you hear the word authority? Control, okay. I don't like it. Yes, anything else? Hierarchy, yes. Qualified, okay, that's interesting, yes. To be respected, yes, we got this idea in this verse. Person carries wisdom, we hope.
Losing freedom.
Losing freedom. Oh, ouch. Yes. A lot of different connotations we have, and perhaps in the present age, in the modern time, it's not a favorite word for a lot of us. And yet what we find in the Bhagavatam, we find all over Shastra, there's a lot of emphasis on authority, and of course, ultimately on supreme authority. And that idea of supreme authority, that really shakes a lot of people, and they say, no thank you. Count me out. Why? Because I want to be the supreme authority. Ishvaroham, aham bogi, siddhoham, balavan sukhi. Krishna imitates the person who is thinking like this. With your indulgence, I'd like to explore briefly what a certain scholar of the early 20th century, Max Weber, had to say about authority, because it may kind of stir our own thinking of how we understand spiritual authority. Max Weber, sometimes he's been called the founder acharya of the study of sociology. But he identified three sorts of authority, first of all. Do you want to hear what they are? No? Yes, okay. One is legal, rational authority. That's what we encounter in relation to the state for the most part, or at least theoretically. It has to do with bureaucracy, it has to do with rules and laws. It's the kind of authority that is encountered when one has to pay taxes, and the kind of authority when we just go outside the house and walk down the street or drive a car. This is all to do with legal, rational authority. Now, an interesting thing to consider, and this is just an aside, is let us hope that this would never happen, but imagine that there would suddenly be a fire here in this house. Then suddenly the authority of our institution here would be set aside, and the authority would immediately go to the fire brigade, right? The chief fireman would come in and said, "Get out of here and go there and stop this and close that," and he would be ordering us, and we would be very obedient, right? Because suddenly in this situation, that person would be authority. Okay, the second type of authority that Weber identifies, he just calls traditional. And the usual example of traditional authority is the monarch, the king. And this we encounter a lot in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The notion of succession of kings is very strong. And as we know, Srila Prabhupada many times bemoaned the lack of Raja Rishis, of enlightened kings. But traditional authority can take various forms, and of course, for us, what's interesting and significant and important is another type of traditional authority, and that we have read about in the purport. Evam parampara praptam Rajashayo vidu. Yes, so this is also a sort of traditional authority, one which passes from teacher to student, from guru to disciple. There's also, and I encountered this when I was studying the Radharaman temple in Vrindavan for some months. I lived almost next door, and I was going every day and getting to know the priests. This is traditional authority. If one is not born into a family of Radharaman priests, and if one is not born, if one is born into a family but is not male, one will not be permitted to do service on the altar of Radharaman. That's just the rule. That's how it's been for the last 480 years, and they don't have any plans to change that. And now a little footnote, to keep you awake. I met one of the young Radharaman Goswamis, and he introduced me to his American wife. And I was surprised, and I asked the young Goswami, "This is not a problem in your community?" And he said, "No, no, it's not a problem." But I inquired a little further from others, and they said, "Well, it's not a problem for him, but it's a problem for his children. If he has children, they will not be allowed on the altar." And okay, that's the tradition. That's how they do things. The third type of authority that Weber speaks about, he calls charismatic authority. You know this word, charisma? Charismatic? Some are saying yes, some are looking like, I don't know, but I'm not going to say. What means charismatic? Anybody? I kind of know what it means, but don't ask me. Right? Maharaj, what is charismatic?
It's something from one's personality which inspires or awakens something within someone else.
Okay, it's personality, attractive personality, the power of attractive personality. But it can also mean being in a position which defies or ignores the other kinds of authority. Can be so powerful that people say, well, legal authority and traditional authority, actually we don't need it because we have now this authority. And it's this category which often is the category of authority which is founding religious traditions. Historians of religion will point out, okay, Jesus was a charismatic person, and he was, or even Gautama Buddha was a charismatic person, and he founded a religion. Okay, so what, you will say. Now, authority is distinguished from one side from coercion meaning force, or just plain power, and it's also distinguished from leadership and from persuasion and from influence. Now this is interesting because we've just been reading about persuasion, where Lord Brahma persuades Priyavrata to become the king. But here a distinction is being made, and what is the core of the distinction? The point is legitimacy. The authority is granted legitimacy. By whom? That is the question. Who gives legitimacy? It's always someone, or it's a group, or it's different groups in different contexts who are granting legitimacy. But legitimacy has to be acknowledged by relevant persons, by persons who are agreeing to follow the direction, the order of this authority, to abide by them. Okay, next thing now, I think we can take a next step from this, keeping these ideas in mind. We are familiar with the idea of shastric authority, right? And we may want to say this is part of traditional authority, and we understand Shastra is very important. We say we may or may not spend much time with Shastra, but here we are, we're attending to Shastra, to Srimad Bhagavatam as we speak here, all of us together. and that's a wonderful thing. But different people give legitimacy to different kinds of Shastra. And we might think about this in terms of people's commitments. And if we kind of step further back, we could look at how Krishna says in the Gita that everyone has faith invested in different modes of nature. Shraddha mayo ayam purusha yo yat shraddha sa eva sa. Everybody, even the card-carrying new atheist is not only having faith, but is full of faith. Shraddha maya means constituted of faith. Everyone has faith, but where is it invested? And among all who have faith, those who are, let's say, more in the mode of goodness, or moving from the mode of goodness to transcendence, Srila Prabhupada sometimes would refer to karmis as transcendentalists. And this might wake you up a little bit, because you always thought karmis are all those foolish non-devotees. But he explained a real karmi. You may never have met a real karmi. A hardcore karmi is one who follows Shastra very carefully in order to know what karma to do at what time and which time of the day and which day of the month and so on. They'll be very meticulous in this. So they will be following possibly the Vedic Samhita, the Rig, the Sama, the Yajurveda, and so on, the Dharma Shastras, like that. Of course, I think it won't be so surprising. Prabhupada would say the jnanis are also transcendentalists, the yogis are also transcendentalists, but among all transcendentalists, who are the topmost? The bhaktas. Each of them have their shastras, and the devotees have as their primary shastra, guess what? Srimad Bhagavatam. And this is authority, and Srila Jiva Goswami goes to great lengths to explain why it is that it's the Bhagavatam that is our number one authority. But there's one particular verse which he quotes, which strikes me as particularly inspiring. Do you want to hear that verse?
Yes.
No?
Yes.
Yes. Veda Puranam Kavyam Cha Prabhur Mitram Priyeva Cha. I have to look. Bodhayantiti hi prahus trivrit bhagavata punaha. He says the Vedas, the Puranas, and Kavya, poetry, they all teach in different ways. The Veda teaches like a Prabhu, like a master, like an authority. And the Puranas teach like a friend, Mitra, someone who says, hey, let me give you a tip. This is not going to make you happy what you're doing. Let me give you some good advice. We're friends, so you can, forgive me, but I have something to tell you that I think is for your good. And Kavya, Prabhur Mitra Priya, Kavya, or poetry, teaches like a beloved, like a someone who is very close, someone who is very dear. Bodhayanti iti hi prahus trivrit bhagavatam iha. The Bhagavata teaches in all three ways. It's all there in the Bhagavatam. All three styles of teaching are there. So if you're not inspired by the master giving you the sauce, as they say in New York, then keep reading. You'll find you'll get the instruction another way, which is perhaps gentler and more to your liking. And if you still don't get it, there will be some sweet poetry, especially in the 10th canto. You'll read how the Shishi Jagannath Subhadra Baladev Ki Jai, Shishi Gauranitai Ki Jai. You'll read how the gopis have devotion for the Lord in such sweet ways that you will be drawn into wanting to be a follower of the residents of Vrindavan. Hantaya Mandirabala Haridasavarya Yat Rama Krishna Charana Sparasha Pramodha Manang Tanoti Sahago Ganayos Tayor Yat Pani Yasuya Vasakandara Kantamulai. The gopis, one particular gopi is saying, "Oh, Govardhan, just see how wonderful. Hanta," she says. Hanta has a double meaning, the acharyas explain. It can mean, "Oh, how wonderful," or it can also mean, "Hanta." We cannot have the association of Krishna the way Govardhan does. Govardhan is in ecstasy because Krishna and Balaram are always playing on top of Govardhan. Pramoda. So there's these different ways that the Bhagavatam is teaching. And we can find access. We can allow ourselves to be in the position of legitimizing. It's kind of responsibility on our part to give legitimation to the Bhagavatam. We consciously do that, and by that then we become receptive to what the Bhagavatam is telling us. And what's it telling us? Well, there is a supreme authority. As the Bhagavad Gita, as Krishna himself tells us, he says in so many ways, Aham sarvasya prabhavo matta sarvam pravartate. Yes, he says, everything is coming from me, and guess what? There's a consequence if you get that point. Iti matva, if you get this, Buddha bhava samanvita, you're going to worship me with all your heart. And how is that going to look? Then he explains in the next verse, you all know it, Matchita, Matgata Prana, Bodhayanta, Parasparam, Tushyanticha, Ramanticha. He tells you what you will do as a result of recognizing the supreme authority, the fact that the Lord is giving everything, by thinking about him. By making him your life. Matgata prana, making your life gone to him, literally. And you'll talk about him. You'll get others to talk about him. Katayantaschamang nityam, and you'll do it not just once a week, you'll do it every day. Katayantaschamang. And what's going to be the nice result of that? Tushyanti, you're going to feel good about it. You'll actually feel happy. You'll feel satisfied. Tushyanti cha, ramati cha. And then, what does Krishna say in the next verse? Tesham satatayuktanam purvakam. now Krishna is talking about reciprocation, isn't it? That because my devotees give themselves as they do, I reciprocate with them. I give them what they need in order to keep going in their service. That reciprocation, then, he explains further in the final of these 4 verses. What is that? Tesham eva nashayam yatma bhavasto jnana dipena bhasvata. We're getting less and less devotees being able to quote the verse. It's time to do some verse learning, verse memorization. Yeah, then Krishna says he has compassion. Anukampa. Kampa means shaking. Anukampa means ongoing shaking. And it comes to mean compassion, a feeling with someone. Tesham eva anukampartam aham agyana jam tama nashayami. I cause to be destroyed this ignorance, which if there's any ignorance remaining in the heart, Krishna says, I'll get rid of it for you. Right? So we, devotees, start to think, maybe he is the authority. Maybe that person who reciprocates in the way he describes in the Bhagavad Gita, perhaps he is the actual authority, the one who deserves full legitimacy. Mm-hmm. That is the thinking process by which the devotees come to this conclusion. And then we come to this conclusion further how? By observing, by hearing about how the Lord appears in, as Prabhupada would say, within the memory of us all. Only 500 and so many years ago. Within the memory of us all? I don't remember 500 years ago. Yes, you do. Culturally, we have a kind of cultural memory, and it therefore, in that sense, is not so long ago. And this Lord, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, performs activities in such a way that something becomes particularly striking to consider him as the supreme authority, and that is that he gives the authority to his followers, to his devotees. Of course, Krishna also does this, but we see this in particular with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He accepts their orders and acts according to their will. And so when Mahaprabhu, wants to go to Vrindavan, why does he want to go to Vrindavan? Well, possibly because he's Krishna himself, and he wants to go back home. But his devotees say, no, this is not the time. You should stay here in Puri. Just stay for another couple of days, yes? And then after a couple of days, stay a little longer, keep staying. But prior to this, Mahaprabhu, of his own accord, decides to renounce the world. He does this. There are deep reasons why he does this, to pay the debt he feels as Krishna to the gopis in Vrindavan. But his followers, his friends, his devotees are devastated. They're completely devastated when he leaves Navadvip. But then they remember, but he's the Supreme Lord, so he can do what he wants. If he wants to give up our company, even though we've given everything to, he can do so. And then they find out that actually he's coming back, and they all go, Haribol. So this exchange that we see in the Chaitanya Charitamrita between Mahaprabhu and his devotees, the Panchatattva and all of his devotees, is convincing to us, aha, here is the supreme authority. We give him our legitimation. Therefore, we can surrender to him. We can surrender to his order, which is a very simple order, essentially to chant the holy name. Harinama, Harinama, Harinama eva kevalam, kalo nastyeva, 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 gatiranyata. 3 times. If we don't get it the first time, if we don't get it the second time, we might get it the third time. That if we chant Krishna's name, we are doing what the Lord wants, so that we can say with a full heart, Badham, let it be so, I accept. Or as King Kulashikar, a king, said, let's see if I can remember this, Matjanmana palamidam madukaitabare matprartana. No, I won't remember it. He says, Tat britya britya, paricharaka britya britya, brityasya britya iti mang smaraloganata. He's praying to Krishna. Oh Lord, please smara. He's actually commanding him. Remember. What does he want the Lord to remember? Remember that I am the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant, 7 times I think he says, of your servant. Again, as Srila Prabhupada says in this purport, a devotee of the Lord always considers himself a servant of the servant of the servant of the Lord. This will keep us on track, and this will keep us happy, and this will keep us recognizing there may be so many authorities for so many purposes, but there is one supreme authority, and we listen to him. And this is the perfection of our lives. What do you think? Yes? No? Maybe? Yes. The lawyer has a question.
Because my question is, because this is something that I found in my spiritual life throughout the years, that there are a lot of devotees who quote the Shastras, but they are like making their point, and then they take the quote and then they say, but I am right because Prabhupada.
Because it says in the Shastra.
Yeah.
Yes.
So who is right?
Yes.
What to do?
Yes, a good question. This came up a couple of days ago. Very similar. There is a danger that Shastra is used as a hammer, or as a finger shaking, and that's a danger. We are not in a position to do that, and that can be a misuse of Shastra. And as I mentioned 2 days ago, although I didn't say this, but Srila Prabhupada many times would say, do not interpret. He said, we just read as it is, and we accept it, and that is all we need to do. I want to suggest, at the risk of sounding disrespectful to Srila Prabhupada, that he's not saying don't interpret, he's saying don't misinterpret. Because we're always interpreting. Every time we read, we're interpreting. If we're not interpreting, it means we're not getting any meaning at all. It means it's just like scribbles on a page. So we're always interpreting. And there are processes for refining our interpretation. And there's a fancy English word for that, which some devotees become a little frightened of. But it's just a word from Greek, I guess. It's called hermeneutics. Hermeneutics is the process, one way of defining it, it's the process of interpreting and of reflecting about how we interpret. And as you say, unfortunately, and we could say this is why the warning is also there traditionally in our tradition, but more specifically in the Karma Kandiya tradition, that a Shastra is not to be made available, meaning the Shruti is not to be made available to the lower classes, those who are not qualified, because they will misunderstand. There's a lot of very strong restrictions, even in that understanding. One who is not born in a Dvija family is not permitted to chant the Bija syllable Om. We chant every day, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This is forbidden for us, actually. No. So there's a process, and there's in recent years been developed a course for learning our tradition of hermeneutics, and it's a very rich course. It's a very rich tradition, and just to keep it very short, it's based on the Dasamula principle, which Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur articulated, that there are 10 essential principles of Vaishnava philosophy. He boils it down to 10 principles. Then that becomes expanded. And then there are ways of weighting different statements, because there seem to be contradictory statements. How do we know? Do I take this one? Do I take that one? How to understand how to balance, how to reconcile different statements. All of that is a practice, it's a culture, it's a skill, and it's about shifting from interpretation in the mode of ignorance and passion to interpretation in the mode of goodness, which is aligned with, I would say, a principle of traditional debate, and this is from the Nyaya tradition. There's 3 levels of debate, and the first of these is Vada. Vada means debate in which the genuine intention of the debaters is to come to the truth. They actually want to find the truth. I may be right and I may be wrong, but let's find out what the truth is. And then there's what's the term for it, for the second? The third one, there's Tarka Vitanda, I think, where the aim is simply to win an argument, and maybe this is what you were referring to. I'm right because this is what it says in Shastra. I've cherry-picked out this particular quote, and I'm going to hammer you with my quote. This is a lower class of debate. And then there's, I think it's called Vitanda, which means the contestants are simply insulting each other. Isn't that it? Huh? Or Jalpa, yeah. Yeah, Jalpa. Yes. Here in the back.
Я изучаю Шримад Бхагаватам на русском языке.
Uh-huh.
I read Bhagavad Gita on Russian language. Шримад Бхагаватам.
Yes.
И пословный перевод санскрита отличается от литературного. And she finds the difference between literature translation from Sanskrit to Russian and translation from word by word. Это проблема только русского перевода или вам перевода Шримад? This is the problem of Russian translator or Russian translation, or it's the same problem in other languages?
Well, first let's consider whether it's a problem. What we could say is that the problem is translating, whether word for word or in a sentence or in a verse form, or I have a wonderful godbrother in America, Kalakanta Prabhu, who has done a beautiful translation of the Bhagavad Gita in rap. Rap English. The nature of Sanskrit is it's a very compact language, and in a sense what we're doing when we're translating, we're translating words, but we're also unpacking, and in the process of unpacking there are different ways of expressing within whatever language it's being translated in. So when you have the word-for-word translation, it's giving the, you can say, essential meaning, but if you would then just sort of put those word-for-word translations together and try to make a sentence out of them, it might not make sense. And so in the translation itself, there may be some apparent difference. Now, to make it more complicated, practically any word in Sanskrit language can have several meanings. That's not so unusual. The same is true in probably Russian and certainly in English and so many other languages. Depending on the context, a word can mean so many different things. So there's some distinction sometimes made, and what I suggest is when you read, this word is translated in a different way in the word for word than in the translation, rather than becoming suspicious, what's going on here? And has the Russian translator cheated us in some way? Rather, you can think, that's interesting, that this same word can be taken this way, or it can also be taken this other way, because that's very often the case. And Srila Prabhupada would do that in his word for word and then his translation. Sometimes he would kind of shift the meaning to perhaps give a different shade of meaning. Does that make sense? Okay. Yes. Microphone, traveling program. Traveling microphones, please.
Thank you much. In this verse we heard how...
Which is not a verse, yeah.
Sorry, this process. We're hearing how Priyavrata, he accepts the order of Lord Brahma, and we hear is a Mahabhagavat. That's the word used. And
Mm-hmm.
when I hear Mahabhagavat, I understand it's a completely perfect being. And just few verses before, at least that's how I understood it, he was disobedient to the same order from when Swayambhu Manu was asking him. So how can we understand that he's a Mahabhagavat, but that initially he was disobedient?
Uh-oh. One thing we find in Shastra is there's kind of two extremes. There's a general tone of Shastra in its process of teaching, as I mentioned. There's Prabhur Mitra Priya Eva, that like a master or master, a teacher, a king, or like a friend or like a lover is teaching. And for this purpose, Shastra may use various rhetorical means. And sometimes the rhetoric is on the extreme of praise, and sometimes it's on the extreme of warning, of danger, and of condemnation. An example of this is Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavatya kinchana sarvairganais tatra samasate sura harava bhaktasya kuto mahanguna manoratenasati dhavato bahi. You all know this verse. That the devotees have all good qualities, and someone who is not a devotee has no good qualities whatsoever. They're simply on the mental platform. They're dismissed out of hand. And if you think you see someone with a good quality, you're wrong. So I think this is a kind of rhetorical verse, but it does have a teaching. It has a purpose, which is to highlight the ideal, which is to cultivate the qualities of the devotee, and to not be caught on the manurata of the mind, where maybe there's some good qualities manifesting because everything is coming from the Lord, but it can just as easily be covered over. So one possibility of understanding in context what you're speaking of, he was disobedient, now he's obedient, he's a Mahabhagavata. Did he just now suddenly become a Mahabhagavata when he agreed? Or was he already a Mahabhagavata at that time, and was he just playing the part of one who is disobedient in order to da-da-da-da-da, right? You can go kind of in that direction. I'm inclined to say this is a kind of rhetoric to say he's really a great devotee. Just see how he has finally accepted the order. See how great he is. It's kind of making a finality to understand what sort of a character we're reading about now. Oh, okay, he is a Mahabhagavat. Even if we had some doubt before, be assured he is a great devotee. And if you're doubtful because of his disobedience before, no, you don't have to doubt, because now he's being obedient because he listened to Granddad. Does that make sense? Yes. Mm-hmm.
On the notion of arguments, and especially in relation to arguments with superiors. And I remember in this hermeneutics course, I think it was Hari Parshad Prabhu who was doing this lesson on Vada. And,
yes.
And then he gave an example which really stayed with me from the Shastra, how this argument between the spiritual master and the disciple is samvada. That's what he said.
It's what?
The argument between the spiritual master and the disciple, that is samvada, that's even
Samvada.
superior.
It's a conversation. Yeah.
And then I was thinking that Prabhupada often mentioned, I also remember Guru Maharaj said that when you're before the spiritual master, you're a fool. So where does this question of argumentation come in? Because even here we see there is some sense of argumentation.
Ah, interesting. I think it's very much a matter of just what the relationship is with the Guru. If it's strong, then the Guru will encourage from the disciple disagreement. Shall I say that again? Some of you were sleeping when I said that. Yeah. He may actually encourage. Yeah, come on, disagree with me. Let's see what you have to say about this. Let's have an argument. It's possible. The Guru doesn't always just want to be agreed. The Guru doesn't want sycophants. You know what a sycophant is?
One always agrees.
Yeah, one is, yes, yes, Maharaj, yes, Maharaj, yes, Maharaj, badham, badham, badham. But inside may be something else entirely going on, right? Yes, sir, no, sir, yes, sir, maybe. Yeah. One of my godbrothers was telling me he had a relationship with Srila Prabhupada where he could joke with Prabhupada in such a way as to make fun of Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada liked it. So I think it's very personal. It's a matter of, the relationship. When that relationship is strong enough, then there can be, because it's samvada. Samvada means actually dialogue. It doesn't mean argument in the negative sense of debate. It means dialogue. It's complete vada. Vada is debate for getting to the truth. Samvada is comprehensively getting to the truth. Yeah. Right. Yes, Maharaj.
Thank you, Maharaj. Just on Damodar Prashad Prabhu's point, just two things came to my mind. Number one, although he seemingly disobeyed the order of Swayambhuva Manu, he was following the order of Narad Muni. So, I mean, you can't you can't say he was disobedient because Narad Muni had told him that you should. So
the plot thickens.
And then the other thing I was thinking is that perhaps a pure devotee can make two different decisions at different times, and they can still be in perfect consciousness. Like, maybe one philosopher talks about act-based ethics and motivation-based ethics. I don't know, maybe Aristotle, maybe. And says that something is ethical not because of the act, but because of the motivation behind it. That's what makes it right. So in two different situations, one may do something externally different, but they can both be perfect if the motivation at that moment when they made the decision was just.
Yes, very good. Thank you. In Buddhist ethics, they emphasize motivation a lot. That's one of the kind of defining characteristics of Buddhist ethics, which is highly developed, even though in the end they say there's no self, and you may wonder then what's all the fuss about. But yeah, motivation. Yes, good point. Thank you. Right. So I think we're ending on a bright note, and I want to wish you all a wonderful, bright day today. It's nice hearing the kirtan, I must say. I was hearing kirtan from the room I'm staying in, and it's very sweet. It's nice. So let the kirtan continue. Madhuram Madhurebhyopi Mangalebhyopi Mangalam Pavanam Pavanebhyopi Harinameva Kevalam Harinama Harinama Harinameva Kevalam Kalo Nasteva 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 Gatiranyataha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Gaur Premanande.
His Holiness Krishna Ksetra Maharaj ki jai.
You survived those months.
It's such a rich class. I'm going back to London
For one day? No.
Yeah, because my
Oh, right. Have to leave.
So I'll come back. I'll come to
Well, if you could put in a word to
yesterday I was talking about being back to really inspired. My first step to that is trying to be very
Okay. That's something I've never done, never dared, because mainly my feet. It's hard for my feet and my knees. I get it far. Yeah. One book you might want to read if you haven't already is David Haberman's Journey Through the 12 Books. Oh, it's nice. Well, if you could put in a word for me, then you'll be pretty. I try to see what it is they are, what's behind their order, basically are aiming for, and see if there's something there that really sympathize with, and then see if you can say, well, I see what you're after, but let's do that a different way, or whatever.
What if somebody is like, somebody has this authority and they have the power, and if they're misusing the power, then how do you know?
When there's a misuse of power, then you have to consider how to deal with that. In the last analysis, the last fallback is to go to a higher authority and submit a complaint. Say, this is a misuse. I feel there's some response. Because if the person is consistent in doing something like that, they're actually not serving the mission. They're hurting others and so on. So that maybe has to be part of it.
Yeah, but what if you complain to the higher authority and they don't do anything about it? So how would you do
Complain again.
Well, if you keep doing it and they still don't do it because they don't want to deal with that. So how would you deal with that?
I'm not sure how I would do it. I might start kind of ignoring the person who is making trouble.
Yeah, that's why I'm actually here. I tell you,
So,
no, because I mean, the problem is not that you're thinking nothing is not right. It's just the problem with the music passion. Because it's so chaotic. I'm living here for 2 years now. And it was so, oh my God, it was so chaotic. And one Mataji was when I knew the Krishna consciousness has taken responsibility to be the passion leader. It just doesn't make any sense. And then she, my good Kapilana or something, and Maharaj just, like, he just kind of looked at me, like, what do you want? Because he couldn't understand what she wants. Anyway, it's going on for 2 years. And now I came to the point where I was thinking, I just cannot deal with this anymore. And I spoke with my Guru, I said, I think I was there from I know it's out of the temple. And I just keep coming, I still doing the seva for you and for the Krishna. And he said, okay, this is much better for you. Because I was also very tired to bother him again. I don't want to bother him because he has 100 things to do. And I focus my commitment. I didn't want to bother him. I also tried to speak with him on the and he was helpful. I was very nice sometimes. At one point he also just he stopped helping in this case. He couldn't help. Because the lady that there is, he favors her a lot. Even Shravana Mataji, she tried to help him. She also was very much humiliated and she also stepped back. Yeah, I mean, I'm still talking with her on the phone. And she told me that he also stayed something out from this situation. So I'm also lifted a little bit out, from this. Because you don't want to get into this Prajalpa and it brings you down to that place. It's just so bad for Krishna. That's why I'm just trying to hear and I don't know.
That's good. Sometimes that's all I can do, step back.
But for me, all the situation was, of course there's something I can also improve in myself for sure. But there was something for me also, it was very confusing that how the Lord let all these things happen and then one person continues to do this.
Yeah. We may never know why. But I think it's good the sort of basic principle which you which Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur says is to look inside. And when you see a fault there, most benefit from the situation. Because the outer situation, if it's not this, it's going to be something else. If it's not that, it's going to be something else. Right.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for a wonderful lecture.
Oh.
I wanted to point something from yesterday.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Sometimes I observe in the temple in Germany when they cook, we have had the opportunity to cook with the devotees.
Which?
Govardhan dish. It's between Berlin and Cologne. Sometimes it's very much also. Small Russian, Ukraine.
Yeah.
When we cook with devotees there, sometimes you observe they use, there are some environment and there are industrial.
Yeah.
And here, to make a meal, we need only the milk for a small piece of honey. And sometimes I observe they use industrial milk, industrial cream, in the temple for cooking. I'm not in a position to tell anybody what's wrong and what's right, but I have a little bit of authority, a little bit. They're here when I say to something they want to criticize them. Should everybody stop using industrial milk? It's better not to use milk at all.
Yeah, this is a challenge. I personally decided for myself that I'm just going to have a certain standard for myself, which is what I call an vegan. That, I'll just be vegan in all circumstances unless there's some dairy from cows which are protected for life. If there is, then okay, I'll take some. Not too much, but something. And I decided, well, I'm not going to go on the warpath against the rest of this because it's probably just going to make me frustrated. And it'll just upset people. But what I thought is, well, I'm just going to do this for myself and sort of in a quiet way. And then other devotees will know that this is what I do. And that may have some influence over time. And gradually, devotees will start to question, gosh, what are we doing? We're taking industrial milk, maybe it's not good. Because I think unless there's a change of heart, there will be a lot of resistance. And I think Srila Prabhupada's strategy was, because he was taking people from being full-on meat eaters to vegetarian. And so, in a sense, dairy is kind of in between. And so, because the more I hear and read from the vegan side, the more I understand maybe there's kind of